The hum of Nashville's skyline buzzed through the glass walls of Bluegrass Biotech's executive floor, a sleek testament to the company's rise from a small lab to a publicly traded powerhouse. Owen Harper, 58, sat in his corner office, his gray eyes scanning a spreadsheet that had kept the company solvent through storms others couldn't weather. As chief financial officer for 14 years, Owen had steered Bluegrass through a biotech bubble burst, a hostile takeover scare, and a dozen regulatory hurdles. His hands, rough from teenage summers fixing tractors on his father's Kentucky farm, typed with precision, ensuring every decimal aligned. The books were his domain, clean, timely, unbreakable. But today the air felt different, charged with an unspoken verdict. "You're a bit too rooted in the old ways for where we're headed," Ethan Caldwell, 34, declared, leaning back in Owen's leather chair, his polished loafers propped on the desk. Ethan, the new CEO, had swept in 3 months ago, his Stanford MBA and tech startup pedigree dazzling the board. His jargon, disruption, agile scaling, paradigm shifts, clashed with Bluegrass's methodical culture. "We need someone who speaks the language of next-gen finance," he continued, his smile sharp. "Someone like Liam Porter, 27, his TEDx talk on blockchain and biotechs got 500,000 views." Owen's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed even. "I see. When's the handoff?" Ethan blinked, expecting resistance. 2 weeks. We'll announce at the board meeting." He stood, adjusting his tailored blazer. "No hard feelings, Owen. It's just the market evolving." Owen nodded, offering a firm handshake, his calm a shield against the sting. He'd seen this coming: Ethan's closed-door meetings, his push for innovative accounting software, his disdain for Owen's insistence on triple-checked ledgers. As Ethan left, Owen surveyed his office. A photo of his late wife, Clara, smiling at their son's graduation. A silver pin from Bluegrass IPO. A worn ledger Clara had given him, embossed with truth in numbers. 14 years. And it all fit in one cardboard box. He packed during the all-hands meeting, where Ethan was pitching his bold new era. The office was quiet, save for soft footsteps. Sarah Mitchell, a senior accountant who joined under Owen's mentorship, lingered by the door, her eyes glistening. "This isn't right," she whispered. "You built this place." "It's just the cycle, Sarah," Owen said, his smile steady but thin. "Keep those books clean." He didn't mention the folder on his encrypted drive, 6 months' worth of odd transactions that had surfaced since Ethan's arrival. Vendor payments to untraceable firms, budget shifts without approval, consultancy fees with no deliverables. Owen wasn't plotting revenge. He was doing what he'd always done, protecting the numbers, even on his way out. Owen grew up in Bowling Green, Kentucky, where his father ran a small auto parts shop. "Numbers don't lie, son," his dad would say, teaching him to balance books by hand. Owen worked nights stocking shelves to pay for college, earning an accounting degree while turning down big city offers to stay close to home. In 2009, Bluegrass Biotech's founder, Margaret Ellis, called him personally. "I need a rock," she'd said, the company teetering in the recession. "Someone who sleeps better when the books are square," Owen answered, joining a scrappy lab with 2 facilities and a dream of revolutionizing cancer diagnostics. With Margaret and later CEO Laura Bennett, Owen transformed Bluegrass into a biotech leader, growing to 15 labs across the Southeast. His ledgers were spotless, filings never late, audits always clear. He wasn't flashy, no investor yacht parties, no viral LinkedIn posts, just a man who made numbers tell the truth. When Margaret retired, Laura respected Owen's systems, even when they clashed over budgets. They built steadily, no shortcuts, no scandals. Then Laura stepped down, and the board craved fresh blood. Enter Ethan Caldwell, whose last startup had more Instagram followers than profits. The first warning came in Ethan's first month, when he hired a branding consultant, his old college buddy, for $200,000 0 cents, bypassing procurement rules. "We're playing bigger now, Owen," Ethan said when questioned, his grin dismissive. Then he rerouted finance reports through his new chief growth officer, delaying Owen's access to raw data. The third red flag was a comment overheard at a board dinner. "Our accounting's too rigid. We need creative flexibility." Owen started watching closer. Small anomalies appeared. Payments to a vendor called Nexus Dynamics, no verifiable address. A $50,000 0 cents strategy fee with no contract. Budget lines shuffled, without department sign-off. Sarah had flagged it too, stopping by his office late one evening. "The new R&D allocations don't add up," she said, her voice low. "The numbers shift between entry and final report." Owen nodded, his face calm. "Document everything, Sarah, just the facts." Clara, gone 4 years to leukemia, would have urged him to storm the boardroom, her fire a contrast to his patience. But Owen worked methodically, saving every discrepancy, cross-referencing accounts even as Ethan's new hires, young, loyal to him, replaced Owen's team. He wasn't paranoid. The patterns were too deliberate, tied to Liam Porter's impending arrival. The final board meeting was a 20-minute formality. No mention of Owen's 14 years, no farewell speech, just a slide. CFO transition update. Ethan waxed poetic about Liam's visionary approach to capital, while Owen sat at the table's end, silent. The chairman, Charles Whitaker, avoided his gaze. Charles had been there when Margaret hired Owen, had toasted his steady hand during the IPO. Now he nodded along as Ethan pitched a glitzy new lab in downtown Nashville. As the board filed out, Charles paused, his hand on Owen's shoulder. "You've been a cornerstone, Owen," he mumbled. "Best of luck." A cornerstone, Owen thought, like a slab you replace when it cracks. He returned to his office, Liam's office now, and saw Ethan inside, gesturing at Owen's budget charts like they were relics. Sarah waited by the door, clutching an envelope. "The team took up a collection," she said, voice breaking, "for a proper goodbye dinner." Owen thanked her, knowing he wouldn't use it. As she turned to leave, he asked, "Sarah, when did those Nexus Dynamics invoices start?" "March," she said after a pause. "Right after Ethan announced the AI diagnostics push. March, 2 weeks before Ethan first name-dropped Liam." Owen's gut tightened. This wasn't just a new CFO, it was a cover for something bigger. That night, in his modest ranch house overlooking the Cumberland River, Owen spread his encrypted files across the dining table. 6 months of red flags, Nexus Dynamics invoices untraceable, consultancy fees to firms dissolved after payment, budget reallocations tied to Ethan's growth initiatives. Most damning was Nexus Dynamics registration, filed days before Ethan's CEO announcement, linked to a holding company with no public footprint. The pattern screamed intent, and Liam Porter's arrival wasn't about innovation. It was about execution. Owen leaned back, the river's glint catching his eye. Clara's voice echoed, "Numbers are your weapon, Owen. Use them." He wasn't angry, not yet. Anger was loud, sloppy. What burned in him was colder, sharper. Focus. He opened his laptop, organizing his evidence. Timelines, account trails, cross-references. He wouldn't storm Ethan's office or leak to the press. That wasn't his way. He'd let the numbers speak, but he'd make damn sure they reached the right ears. As the Nashville skyline glowed, Owen Harper, the man they'd called too old school, began to build his case. A quiet storm ready to upend an empire. The Nashville skyline glittered beyond Owen Harper's dining room window, its lights a stark contrast to the storm brewing in his quiet ranch house. A week after his ousting from Bluegrass Biotech, Owen sat alone, the Cumberland River's steady flow mirroring his resolve. Ethan Caldwell's words, "You're too rooted in the old ways," still stung, but Owen's discovery of suspicious transactions had transformed betrayal into purpose. The cardboard box from his office, holding Clara's ledger and 14 years of loyalty, sat in the corner, a silent reminder of what he'd lost. But Owen wasn't done. Armed with evidence of financial irregularities tied to Ethan and his new CFO, Liam Porter, he was ready to let the numbers fight his battle. As he sipped black coffee, his laptop glowed with a web of deceit that could topple an empire. The first cracks appeared in Ethan's second week as CEO. He'd hired a growth strategist, his old Stanford roommate, for $250,000 0 cents, sidestepping Bluegrass's bidding process. "We're scaling fast, Owen," Ethan had said, waving off concerns. Then he funneled finance reports through his hand-picked chief vision officer, delaying Owen's access to raw data. The clincher came at a board lunch, Ethan's voice carrying over the clink of glasses. Our accounting's stuck in the 90s. We need bold solutions. Owen's instincts, honed in his father's Kentucky auto parts shop, screamed trouble. Soon, anomalies surfaced. $75,000, 0 cents payments to Nexus Dynamics, a vendor with no physical address. Consultancy fees with no deliverables. R&D budgets rerouted without lab director's approval. Sarah Mitchell, Owen's trusted accountant, had noticed too. The AI diagnostics funding doesn't track, she'd whispered one night, handing him a printout. Money goes in, but the totals shift by the quarterly report. Owen nodded, his face a mask of calm. Keep a log, Sarah. Just facts. His team, Sarah plus Marcus from internal audit, quietly documented every discrepancy. Owen saved it all on an encrypted drive, sensing Ethan and Liam were hiding something bigger, something tied to Nexus Dynamics, registered mere days before Ethan's appointment. Now, cast out, Owen's suspicions were confirmed. He'd tried the honorable route, calling Charles Whitaker, the board chairman who'd once called him Bluegrass's backbone. Ethan warned you might struggle with the transition, Charles said, his tone clipped. Liam's already fixed the issues you flagged. Owen's stomach churned. Ethan had poisoned the well, painting him as a relic resisting progress. Worse, a letter from Bluegrass's legal team arrived the next day, warning that unsubstantiated claims could violate his confidentiality agreement. The message was clear: stay quiet or face ruin. But Ethan had underestimated Owen's foresight. In his final days, while Ethan thought he was clearing his desk, Owen had created an emergency admin account on the audit server, a routine safeguard no one bothered to deactivate. Late that night, under the river's watchful glow, Owen logged in. What he found wasn't just sloppy accounting. It was a heist. Nexus Dynamics was a hub in a network of shell companies, siphoning $10,800,000, 0 cents, through fake vendor contracts, inflated tech fees, and phantom consultancies. The trail led to a holding company, Pinnacle Ventures, linked to a private equity firm that had placed 2 new board members, including Charles's protege, Nathan Brooks, 6 months ago. The deeper Owen dug, the uglier it got. Ethan's last startup, a biotech flop, was funded by the same firm, suggesting he wasn't hired for vision but installed for plunder. Liam Porter's name surfaced too, buried in Nexus Dynamics' old filings as a co-founder, scrubbed before his Bluegrass hire. This wasn't a new CFO replacing an old one. It was a calculated asset strip, disguised as innovation. Owen's heart raced, not with fear, but with the clarity of truth. Clara's voice echoed. Numbers are your weapon. He organized his findings. Timelines, bank trails, board connections. His hands steady despite the grief clawing at him. He thought of his son, now a doctor in Seattle, who'd grown up with a father too buried in ledgers to attend every game. Of Clara, whose battle with leukemia had taught him patience. This fight wasn't just for him. It was for them, for the legacy he'd built. Owen's next move came at a dive bar outside Nashville, where he met Marcus, his audit lead. Marcus looked haunted, his beer untouched. They promoted me, he said, voice low, but I report to Liam now. New systems, new NDAs. They're saying you fudged last quarter's numbers, Owen, that Liam caught it. Owen's grip tightened on his glass. They weren't just pushing him out, they were torching his reputation to bury their scheme. They're watching us, Marcus added. I've got kids, a mortgage. I can't. I know, Owen said, his voice soft but firm. Protect your family. I'll handle this. Marcus slid him a USB drive. Last month's audit logs. Don't ask how I got it. Owen pocketed it, his resolve hardening. Ethan thought he'd silenced the old guard, but he'd overlooked their loyalty. And Owen's access. Back home, the USB revealed a gold mine. $3 million, 0 cents more in ghost transactions, all funneled through Pinnacle Ventures. Owen's plan took shape. He identified 3 board members likely clean: Ellen Carver, a retired biotech CEO, Rajesh Patel, representing the Employee Pension Fund, and Helen Ortiz, a veteran director who'd sparred with Ethan's flashier proposals. He drafted emails to them, vague but pointed, citing concerning patterns with select evidence. Enough to spark questions, not enough to expose his hand. He set them to send in 48 hours. Then he called Sarah. They met at a quiet coffee shop, her face pale. "They're slashing accounting," she said. "Half my team's being reassigned. They say my role's under review." Owen slid her an envelope. "This is a formal complaint for internal audit. It cites only data you'd have access to. File it and they can't touch you. Whistleblower laws protect you." Sarah's hands shook, but she nodded. "For you, Owen, and for Clara." The final piece came unexpectedly. His phone rang, a blocked number. "Owen Harper? This is Carla Reyes, Sec Enforcement Division. We've received an anonymous tip about financial misconduct at Bluegrass Biotech, possibly involving its new leadership. Your name came up as a potential source." Owen's pulse spiked. Someone? Marcus? Sarah had blown the whistle. "I'd need time," he said, buying a buffer to ensure accuracy. Reyes agreed, but the clock was ticking. Owen worked through the night, his dining table a war room. He backed up his evidence to secure cloud servers, setting a dead man's switch. If he didn't enter a code every 72 hours, the files would go to the SEC, DOJ, and 2 trusted Wall Street Journal reporters. He notarized an affidavit detailing his findings, leaving a sealed copy with his lawyer, with instructions to open if he vanished. Clara's ledger sat open, her handwriting truth in numbers, a beacon in the dark. He thought of her laugh, her courage, the way she'd urged him to fight for what mattered. Tears welled, not just for her loss, but for the man he'd been trusting. Loyalty would shield him. Now that trust was his weapon, forged into evidence that could bring Ethan down. By dawn, Owen's plan was set. Sarah would file her complaint tomorrow, triggering an internal audit Ethan couldn't ignore. The board emails would land simultaneously, sowing doubt among the clean directors. The SEC was circling, and Owen's server access, still undetected, gave him leverage. Ethan and Liam thought they'd buried the old-school CFO, but they'd miscalculated. Owen Harper wasn't just numbers, he was the truth they couldn't erase. As the river glowed under the rising sun, he closed his laptop, ready for the storm to break. The Cumberland River shimmered under Nashville's dawn, its steady current a quiet witness to Owen Harper's war. 8 days after uncovering a $10,800,000 0-cents fraud orchestrated by Bluegrass Biotech CEO Ethan Caldwell and his protege Liam Porter, Owen had set his trap. From his ranch house he'd launched a 3-pronged assault. Encrypted evidence of shell companies like Nexus Dynamics, emails to untainted board members, and a whistleblower complaint through Sarah Mitchell. The SEC was circling, tipped off by an anonymous source, and Owen's dead man's switch ensured his findings would reach the feds if anything happened to him. Ethan thought he'd buried the old-school CFO, but Owen's numbers were a blade, sharp and unforgiving. As he sipped coffee, the phone buzzed. Sarah, her voice trembling with urgency. "It's happening, Owen. Audit's live. Board's meeting today." The storm was breaking. The past week had been a masterclass in restraint. Owen had ignored Ethan's taunts, the legal department's threats, and the board's dismissal, all while building an ironclad case. He'd traced Nexus Dynamics to Pinnacle Ventures, a front for a private equity firm that had planted Ethan and 2 board allies, including Nathan Brooks, to siphon Bluegrass's wealth. Liam's prior role in Nexus sealed their collusion. Owen's evidence, bank trails, forged contracts, board connections, was a noose tightened by Sarah's complaint and his timed emails to Ellen Carver, Rajesh Patel, and Helen. But the SEC call from Carla Reyes had raised the stakes. Someone else had seen the rot, and Owen's window to act was narrowing. He'd fortified his position, notarizing an affidavit and securing his files, driven by Clara's memory, truth in numbers. Now, as Sarah's text confirmed the audit's launch, Owen felt the weight of 14 years, and a fight lost to cancer, fueling his fight. By noon, Bluegrass's headquarters was a battlefield. Sarah's complaint, citing discrepancies only a senior accountant could access, forced an internal audit Ethan couldn't quash. Owen's emails hit the board's inboxes simultaneously, their measured tone belying damning evidence. $3 million, 0 cents in ghost payments. Nexus's shady origins, Liam's hidden ties. Ellen Carver, chair of the audit committee, called an emergency meeting, her authority overriding Ethan's protests. Sarah's updates poured in, Ethan's sweating in the boardroom, Liam's with legal, outside auditors just arrived. Owen stood by his window, the river's calm grounding him. He didn't gloat, he mourned. Bluegrass was his life's work, built with Margaret Ellis and Laura Bennett, now bleeding under Ethan's greed. He thought of his son, Ethan, now a doctor, who'd once asked why Dad worked so late. This was why. To protect what he'd built, even after they'd cast him out. At 4 p.m., the news broke internally. Bluegrass was under investigation for financial misconduct. Ethan, Liam, and Nathan were suspended, their offices sealed. Charles Whitaker and another board ally resigned by evening, their exits a tacit admission of complicity. The stock plummeted 12%, but Owen's evidence ensured the probe targeted leadership, not workers like Sarah or Marcus. Helen Ortiz, appointed acting chair, called Owen that night, her voice heavy. 14 years, Owen. No scandals, no misfilings. I should have fought for you. You're fighting now, Owen said, his tone even. That's enough. We need you back, she urged, just to guide the forensic team, stabilize the ship. Owen glanced at Clara's ledger on his desk, its embossed words glinting. I'll help with the audit, he said, but I'm not returning as CFO. Bluegrass needs someone who can innovate. A faint smile crossed his lips, the irony bitter but satisfying. The Nashville courthouse was a fortress of stone and glass, its air thick with consequence. 6 weeks later, Owen sat in a side room, consulting with forensic accountants as the SEC and DOJ built cases against Ethan, Liam, and their board enablers. The audit had uncovered $13,400,000 0 cents in fraudulent transactions funneled through a web of shells to Pinnacle Ventures. Ethan faced federal charges for securities fraud and embezzlement. Liam, implicated as Nexus's architect, turned state's evidence, his TEDx fame a footnote. Charles and Nathan settled quietly, their reputations in tatters. Bluegrass agreed to governance reforms and fines, shielding employees and shareholders from the fallout, a win Owen had insisted on. He worked silently, declining interviews and boardroom fanfare. Sarah, promoted to director of accounting, texted, "New CEO's rebuilding right, thanks to you." Marcus, freed from Liam's shadow, sent a photo of his kids at a Titans game, a rare smile on his face. Owen's heart ached, not for the victory, but for the cost. He thought of Clara, who'd have stormed the board with fire in her eyes, of his son, who'd called last night, proud but distant, a reminder of years Owen had traded for Bluegrass. Tears fell, not for Ethan's fall, but for the man who'd trusted too long, believing loyalty would protect him. He wiped them away, resolve rising. This wasn't just justice, it was redemption. 3 months later, Owen stood on a cedar deck overlooking North Carolina's Blue Ridge Mountains, his new cabin modest, but alive with the Smokies' whisper. He'd retired, Bluegrass's settlement for his consulting work funding the purchase outright, with enough left for a quiet life. The Nashville house was sold, its memories too heavy. Clara's ledger sat on his desk, beside a photo of them at their son's graduation, her smile eternal. Owen had shipped his IPO pin and family photos to the cabin, anchoring his new start in roots that Ethan couldn't touch. He'd taken a part-time role with a local nonprofit, streamlining their books for addiction recovery programs. Work that felt like Clara's legacy, not Bluegrass's shadow. Sarah's latest text glowed on his phone. Parallel audit trails permanent now. You taught us well. Bluegrass was healing, its new leadership vowing transparency, its workers safe. Ethan and Liam awaited trial, their scheme a cautionary tale in biotech blogs. Owen felt no joy in their ruin, only peace in his escape. A job offer came that morning, a consultancy for a Memphis startup needing steady hands. "I'll consider it," Owen told the caller, his voice calm. But as dusk painted the mountains gold, he poured bourbon and sat on his deck, the river's song replaced by the Smokies' breeze. Clara's voice lingered. "Make time for the view, Owen." He did, now, every day. The numbers had spoken, dismantling a fraud that could have destroyed thousands. But the real victory was here, in a life reclaimed, built on integrity his father taught and Clara lived. Ethan had called him old school, but Owen Harper was timeless, a man who turned betrayal into a legacy that would outlast them all.